Hi, this is my dog Minton. Minton eats everything. He just ate my shuttlecock. Bad Mitten. Bad Mitten. And that is your joke of the day. Hello, AHLISA. So, for today, we're going to continue, or actually really start talking about battles during the Civil War. So I got a video for you, which is basically notes, things to keep in mind as you look at these notes and start taking these notes, is that the South, of course, has a very different perspective on this war, right? For them, it's not the Civil War, it's called the War of Northern Aggression. So start thinking about, how this could be perceived as a war of northern aggression, since you might be writing about that, when we're done with this. Hint. Yeah. So with that, hope all is well. Stay safe, stay smart. No additional homework tonight over the weekend, but it is the end of the quarter. So if there are things you need to get to me, things you still owe me, get them to me by Friday. All right. Again, take it easy, guys. Talk to you later. Bye. So now that we have established who's going to fight in our army, we've got our strategies, we know what our advantages and disadvantages are. Now we just need to fight the darn thing. And so, how do you start a war, out of nowhere? So, what both sides actually agreed to do was they picked kind of like a time and a place. So, they pick a location between the two capitals, between Washington, D.C., and the southern capital of Richmond. And they basically just pick a wide open area where you can have these huge armies go and fight. And so that turns into a fun question. What do you call these battles then that are going to happen in the middle of nowhere? So Northerners refer to battles by their closest body of water. So this battle in the middle of nowhere is near a creek named Bull Run. So Northerners refer to this as the Battle of Bull Run. Southerners name these battles by the closest town. And so Manassas is a small little junction town, which is not far away. And so the South would refer to this battle as Manassas. And as you can also see, it's First Bull Run or First Manassas, meaning that there was going to be another battle later on in the war on the same exact battlefield. So the Battle of First Bull Run, again, is planned. Time and dates predetermined. Both armies kind of arrive. The Northern Army shows up with their brand new uniforms, their brand new weapons. They're ready to go. The South shows up. Again, their soldiers are told, bring what you got. Many of them used to be in the Northern Army. They show up in their old uniforms. Their uniforms are the same uniforms as the uniforms of the North. So you have armies wearing the same colored uniforms, fighting in battles. The South doesn't even really have a battle flag yet, and so states are fighting under their state flags. And so there's going to be a lot of confusion at this battle as to who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, that type of thing. In terms of the fighting of First Bull Run, it's kind of chaotic. Both sides are kind of learning how to fight. Neither side really presses their advantage. It's kind of a mess. You do though have a gentleman by the name of Thomas Jackson, who you see here. He receives his famous nickname of Stonewall at this battle. So Stonewall Jackson is from Virginia. He was actually a math teacher at a military school. He is leading his students in battle, and he follows orders. And so his order was to hold this position, to like put his guys here, and his guys, are to stay here. And they didn't budge. And as they were attacked and attacked and attacked, their unit didn't move. And afterwards, both sides talked about this unit, how you couldn't get them to move, and that Jackson stood there like a stone wall, and the nickname kind of stuck, and his soldiers became known as the Stonewall Brigade. But in terms of the battle, it is going to be a South victory. And the Union Army kind of just evaporates. It's chaotic. There's no one knows how to organize a retreat. Soldiers are running every which way. The South thinks maybe they've won the entire war at this point. So they don't pursue, which is going to be a missed opportunity because if they had pursued, they could have gone all the way to Washington, D.C. and maybe taken it. But again, that wasn't their initial strategy, right? Their strategy is just to play defense. Um, the North attacked them, they beat back the North. Maybe they've won the war. That's kind of what they're looking. Um, the other thing that also adds to the chaos is that since it was a planned battle, people came to watch it. So people like rode out in buggies and like had picnic lunches and things like that. And so they were clogging the roads back to Washington. The soldiers couldn't even use the roads back to Washington. They had to run along the sides of them or through the woods, which helped kind of the chaos. But it is a big Southern victory. And so for the North, what they learned from this is that it's not going to be quick. I mean, both sides kind of thought this war would be over in like 3 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks. Everyone thought the North would win. They had every advantage. But now that the South won, well, maybe, maybe they can win this thing. And so they gained some confidence. The North has to regroup. And so what the North does is they find new leadership and they hire or place George McClellan as leader of the Army of the Potomac. And so the Army of the Potomac is going to be the main Northern Army, and McClellan is placed in charge of that army. His plan is to fight the South in one big, giant, open field battle. Um, and the problem with McClellan is he is way too cautious. He doesn't like to fight. He's a politician. He doesn't like Lincoln. He's also a Democrat. He's not against slavery. He believes secession is wrong, but he believes you can negotiate with the South, and he's willing to negotiate with the South, and he's willing to let them keep their slaves if it brings the country back together. So he wants to be president. And he's got an army of like 100,000 guys. And he looks at his army of 100,000 soldiers, he's 100,000 voters. And so if you want these men to vote for you, well, first off, they have to be alive to vote for you. So he doesn't want to fight. And then second, he treats his army really, really well. So they don't march, they don't drill, they don't practice. They have the best foods, they have the best supplies. He treats his army really, really well. And his soldiers, as a result, really, really like him. But in terms of being a military leader, he's terrible. And so again, as he takes his time and heads towards Richmond, and again, not carrying out the Anaconda plan, jumping right to the end there, he gives the South time to prepare, time to build up their defenses. The South is being led by a guy named Joseph Johnston at this point in the army, and he is clearly outnumbered. And so he doesn't want to attack. McClellan, on the other side, always thinks he's outnumbered. He's convinced he's outnumbered, and that's the excuse he uses for never attacking. So what you get is this weird standoff happening outside Richmond. Jefferson Davis, who is president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis tells Joseph Johnston, "You have to attack." And Johnston's like, I can't attack. I'm outnumbered. He's got 30,000 more guys. And Jefferson Davis says, "We don't care. You can't let him stay out there. You have to attack." And so Johnston does attack. And in that attack, Joseph Johnston gets injured and is replaced by Robert E. Lee. And Robert E. Lee is a brilliant, brilliant commander of Southern forces. And there's a short reading on Robert E. Lee so you can get a better sense of who he is. Robert E. Lee will get this job very early on the war, and he will not relinquish it. And so he takes over commander of the main Southern Army, which is called the Army of Northern Virginia. And Lee is a brilliant tactician, and he knows McClellan is an idiot, and he uses the fact that McClellan is an idiot to his advantage. Lee fights a series of small little battles, managed to keep pushing McClellan back to the point where he is basically trading space for time. And Lee relieves the pressure on Richmond and pushes McClellan back further away from the capital. Lincoln is furious with McClellan, doesn't understand why McClellan is refusing to fight, why McClellan is not using his full army. Lincoln even says even writes a letter to McClellan at one point that if he would allow Lincoln to borrow the army, so Lincoln can go and use it. So Lincoln fires McClellan, and he replaces McClellan with John Pope. Lee then defeats John Pope at the Second Battle of Bull Run. And why Lee can easily defeat Pope at the Second Battle of Bull Run is because McClellan, who was demoted to a separate field command, refused to come and help John Pope. And the thought was that McClellan wanted Pope to lose, wanted to prove a point to Lincoln. And sure enough, Pope loses. And so now Lincoln's like, oh man, now who do I get? And so he has to fire Pope, and so he brings back McClellan because he has no other alternative. So McClellan gets what he wants, even though he was completely insubordinate at the Battle of Second Bull Run. Lee, picking up on this indecisiveness of the Northern Army, decides to attack into Maryland. And remember, Maryland is a slave state, but they are loyal to the Union. And the thought was that if you can attack into Maryland, maybe you can bring Maryland into the Confederacy. And again, remember, that is what Lincoln is afraid of. And so the advantages of doing this, of attacking into Maryland, is one, Maryland has food. Maryland does not grow cotton, right? They grow food. And so Lee's army needs to eat. And so you can get food and you get supplies in Maryland. Also, you can kind of flip the field of battle. Right now, all the fighting has been going around Richmond, right? If you fight into Maryland, right, that's on the other side of Washington, D.C., it puts the pressure in Washington, D.C. now. And if you put the pressure in Washington, D.C., you're relieving the pressure on Richmond. And then next, if you fight a battle and you win a battle going on offense, maybe that's enough to convince England and France to come and join the war on the southern side. Again, remember, the South is looking at themselves as if they are kind of like George Washington in the American Revolution. And they realize that Washington needed France to help him win the American Revolution. The South is looking towards England and France for the same reasons. England and France have all the supplies and all the resources that they need to help them win this thing. And so all this now is going to build towards a battle in Maryland. And then something devastating happens for Robert E. Lee, is that the plan of this attack is found by two Union scouts. So two Union soldiers find a copy of Lee's plans for his attack into Maryland. And McClellan is given those plans. So McClellan knows where Lee is going, when he's going to get there, how many soldiers he has, and he also knows that Lee's army needs food because part of the mission is to find food. McClellan has every possible advantage going into this battle, and it is going to be the biggest battle of the war so far, and the worst single day of fighting in that battle that we call the Battle of Antietam.